Hey, this is Friendo, and I am moved into my new apartment. And today I'm going to do a response to Theo Warner. So, the questions, the dialogue that Theo is engaged in, is asking the question: what is atheism? What does it mean to be an atheist? Um, and in various questions related to this, why did you become an atheist? How do we look at atheism within and without the community? Um, and I have to say, personally, I've always found this discussion, what does it mean to be an atheist, to be fairly pedantic. Um, People who really take that question seriously, I think, are being very pedantic, focusing on meanings of words that only describe individuals. And I'd relate it in the sense of, if we start with the word theist, we start with theism. This is something that kind of, as a term, it only exists in reference to this discussion, this debate. In real life, people identify by their actual religion. And that may be something very vague, like non-denominational Christian, or saying, I'm very spiritual but not very religious. No matter how vague that description is, though, people are not going to say, well, I'm a theist. That's just not really a thing in terms of people's identity. But it serves as a useful nomenclature for people who are not atheists. And so it's kind of ironic in that sense. But if someone were described as a theist or described themselves as an atheist, I'd have no idea what they actually believe, because this encompasses religions that, in fact, stand in direct opposition to each other. But I feel that the word atheist is exactly the same. It doesn't actually tell you any of the positive propositions that go into a person's philosophy, personal stance. I can't, for example, conclude that because someone identifies as an atheist, therefore they support gender equality or marriage equality or LGBT rights and issues. The two just don't follow. But I do think that there is a sense of consistency. There are some underlying principal reasons why most people find themselves in the atheist camp, on the atheist side. I think there are definite commonalities. It's not just an arbitrary distinction, and there is some significance to it. But for myself, I would say that atheism is purely a consequence of my beliefs. I did a tally of all the different positions that I hold, tried to bring some consistency to them in a number of systematic ways, and as a result concluded I am an atheist. In fact, as a result, I concluded I never really did believe in God. I had these personal convictions that I was told as a consequence of believing in the value of the individual, for example. Some sense of, I don't really like the term objective morality, but of morals that are not wholly intersubjective, things that, modalities that we can say are right and wrong, regardless of how people at the time interpreted them. And I was told that in order to have these things, I had to believe in God. I had to be religious. But when I actually took a tally of how it all added up, I concluded I never really did believe in God. I never was spiritual. I never expected that when I prayed, my prayers would be listened to and answered. And when people told me my prayers had been answered, I never really believed that they did. I deep down inside, under the layers of repression, really believed that it was just a coincidence. When people said, I prayed for this and this happened, outside of my mind, but inside I was just like, so what? This happens and the two have nothing linking them together. that was what I really thought on the inside. And so over time, I have continued to look at my beliefs and see if they're becoming more consistent with each other or less consistent. And what I've determined is I have three primary positions that define what it means for me to be an atheist, or to answer the question, why I am an atheist. And I would put them in terms of different levels of positions. So the highest would be my ontological position. I am an existentialist. In response to the question of what does it all mean, my answer is intrinsically nothing. Subjectively or intersubjectively, everything is what we make of it. So, for example, I can make fire, that is an objective process. But if I were to ask the question, what does it mean that now there is a fire, we can respond to that in terms of, well, now I feel comfortable, now it's warm, now I can cook my food, it will scare animals away. It means that I can sleep in comfort. But how I will address that metaphorically, how I will explain that emotionally, that is the ontological concept of meaning. So I could say fire is salvation. Fire is enlightenment, because I sit by the fire and I read. I could say fire is safety. I could say fire is the family, because it's around the fire that I gather my family, where I really feel a sense of purpose and belonging. And theists, I think, would typically answer ontological questions by referring them to God. Whatever they supply as the meaning of God, it's going to be an answer to this ontological query. What does it mean? And my position is that we supply meaning to everything that we come in contact with, particularly if these are abstract concepts, notions that don't exist in the objective world: truth, beauty, justice, wisdom, and I would say God. Anything that is spiritual does not have objective, physical, or energetic form, can't be measured, looked at, broken down mathematically. All of these things are ontological claims, and we supply the meaning that we want. And so that's my first position. Ontologically, I'm an existentialist. Meaning is what we want it to be, what we make of it. Below the ontological is the epistemological, and my epistemological stance is empiricism. So when we ask how we know things, or more commonly the question would be, what is evidence? How do we make proofs of claims? My response would be, evidence is only what we can demonstrate empirically. Now, other disciplines provide other kinds of support, like logical or mathematical proofs. Even appeals to emotion, getting people to feel a certain way or ask them how they feel about certain things, provides a measure of support for different ideas, but none of that is evidence. Evidence is something that only exists in the world of matter, the world of space and time. And it is through observations, and more importantly, comparisons of observations, that scientific method, that it's not just observing something once, that you can call it evidence, that you can call it a fact. You have to control for your variables. You have to demonstrate that you have a falsifiable method. You have to repeat your results. All of these properties of the empirical method, I would argue, all of those are necessary to call something evidence. So in regards to the religious debate, theism debate, typically when I have this conversation with people, and atheists tend to say, well, the evidence is on our side. I believe in God if you just show me some evidence. And then the theist will say something like, well, the world is so perfectly interconnected. Don't you think it's weird that everything works out just perfectly for life? Or the world is so beautiful. There's evidence everywhere. And I stop and I say, well, I've thought this through. Speaking from an epistemological standpoint, none of that is evidence. I'm not dismissing this arbitrarily in saying so. I just think you're misunderstanding what I mean when I say it would take evidence. I'm not saying it would take an appeal to emotion or a logical argument or a mathematical proof or a statement of some sort of personal meaning. I mean this in terms of evidence taken in a technical sense, given this epistemological understanding. And then the third value, I guess I'd say the lower value of the three, but the third related quantity here is my value system, which is humanism. So in terms of right or wrong, if any action that we are talking about, or holding a belief, or ways of interacting with people, if we are going to ask, are they good or bad? Are they right or wrong? Does this represent a social or personal positive or negative? Then I would refer to the value system of humanism. I don't ask questions about what God would think of an action or what any external entity would think. Or say if it was aliens observing us from afar, judging our actions based on their own criteria. I simply ask the question, how does this affect people? That is my value proposition. And so being an atheist is the result of these three positions, these sort of three levels of awareness, and the conclusions that I have made from them. And so asking me, when an apologist or a Christian would ask me, what would it take for you to believe in God? Or would you, could you be open-minded enough to consider the existence of God? I kind of shake my head and go, well, I mean, not really. To be perfectly honest, not really. Because my personal beliefs are simply not at all dependent on the existence of God. I have an entire way of looking at the world that is not in opposition to the existence of God, but simply has nothing to do with it. It would be like trying to use the Bible, trying to find ways to get biblical passages to support one position or the other in arguments about auto repair or sports teams. It's just not at all pertinent. Now, people can supply any number of quotes or actual information that is biblical, biblical passage as an assertion, and then I can say, looking at it objectively, whether I agree or disagree, whether it fits into my values and my understanding. It's just it being from the Bible does not make any difference to me one way or another. Passages from the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the writings of L. Ron Hubbard or what have you simply doesn't relate to the worldview that I've expressed. But that worldview doesn't come from not believing in God. These positions are mutually independent in terms of their origin. It's not that I have this value system of humanism because I have an ontological system of existentialism. And it's not that I have a epistemological system of empiricism because I have an ontological system of existentialism. And indeed, that's not the only combination of those three positions that people can have. So for me, I would say atheism or theism, as these are just descriptions of where people fit in the debate, in the dialogue, in the discourse. It doesn't actually tell you any of the positive positions that they actually hold. Although I guess, theism is a positive claim, but it doesn't tell you anything about how people are actually going to act, what their epistemological views are, what their values are, and how they would conflict with each other, let alone with people who are in the opposite position. So I would say atheism is just a consequence of the beliefs, the actual positions that I hold. And I believe, for honest theists, theism is the same. Thank you.